Good morning. We're looking at 11 o'clock, 11:06, something like that down here in the Medellin area. And I've been doing a lot of reading lately and watching and hear people talking about women's sports. Now, I'll tell you that I used to be a big fan of women's tennis. And I knew truck drivers that would sit in the bar with me that I was where I was tending bar, and they would watch women's tennis. And everybody said, "Why? Why do you watch women's tennis?" Well, back then, when we're talking about Chrissy Everett time, okay, she wasn't really all that sexy or anything like that, but she was a great tennis player, and her matches would have tremendous amount of what they call volleying. Can't say it, but you know what I'm talking. Back and forth play, all right. Whereas the men's tennis was usually over two or three hits of the ball, and the point was gone, and that was it. You didn't have the volley, the volleys that everybody has and that they have in women's sports. So women's tennis was much more exciting to watch, and everybody and to see all these truck drivers that I had in the bar, grizzly old guys with beard stubble and everything else. None of them exceptionally handsome or anything like that. Rooting for Chrissy Everett was really, really something else. And I enjoyed it. And I think that that's a problem that we don't have. Women's tennis got well. First of all, you're dealing with racially prejudiced truck drivers and whatnot. They didn't like. Uh, what's her name, the big black lady, because she was very muscular. She was like a man. She was good shape. I mean, she was muscular. Serena, sorry about that, and she began to dominate like a man, and people didn't like that. That there was no. It got boring. It's funny how people are. They'll sit there and they'll go to a tennis match to watch their hero or heroine, and they'll sit back later on and complain that wasn't that exciting. He's pretty good. He dominates. And they just go to see him win, and it doesn't take them that long to do it. That's pretty much of a ordained ending to that. Uh, and there's not a lot of excitement there. Not all the time. Certain matches, and if you're lucky, you get them on TV. If you're not, that doesn't show up on TV, and you don't have a real exciting match. And what are you going to do? You just sit there and get bored. So what's going on with basketball today is that people are discovering women's basketball. Women's basketball was always a little bit more competitive than male basketball, and I hope they don't, because of its increases in popularity and whatnot lately, that they don't ruin the game. They let them play the way they've been playing. You don't see a tremendous amount of three-point shots in women's basketball, but you do see a lot of good ball handling and layups and passing and whatnot. They're better at that than men are, I think, anyhow. And the game's more exciting. Now, you don't get to see where I live anyhow right now. I don't get to see a lot of women's college basketball. I don't get to see a lot of women's sports except the WNBA. So I really don't know how good the women are, or how truly exciting that level of the game, the college game is. Because I know men's sports, the college game is much more exciting than the professional level. But because you don't have 11 of the best, you have one or two of the best, and nine or so good but not great players. Whereas in the professional ranks, you have 11 of the best players at their position playing the game. So it's a little bit different that way. So anyhow, I found that it's men don't know how to announce the game, don't know how to take care of the game, don't know much about the women's game. And I said, listen, when I first saw girls playing basketball back in the 50s, they stood there and passed the ball around, and that was it. It was the most boring game on the planet. At some point in time, the game became much more active, and the rules changed, and the game became much more enjoyable. And I think women's sports are enjoyable. I think the only one that might not be is women's softball, only because, first of all, I don't like baseball that much to begin with. But women's softball, the pitchers, especially the female pitchers, wherever they had, whatever team it is, the pitchers dominate the game more than the hitters do. So it's a little bit less. Well, it's a slower game too. So, you know, I've never watched lingerie football because I think that's just the dumbest thing on the face of the earth. But you know, that's not because they're playing football. You know, I've seen female kickers. They can, you know, I've seen females play football, and it's not, you know, play touch football. And that's not something you want to get involved in. If you think you're good, you'll be embarrassed, and that's not what you want because they're quicker and faster than men are, and that's that on that side of the sport. All right. So what's next? Another big story I was watching is about the Republicans defeating the right to contraception law or bill, whatever that was going through, and you get the feeling now that if you listen to Trump and the rest, since they did away with the Roe versus Wade abortion rights and whatnot, that all they want women to do is there's no such thing as recreational sex, okay? They want women to have sex, to have babies, pump out a bunch of little Republicans, and go about their merry way of going back to work. I think that's disgusting. I think lust is a very hard emotion to control. I don't want to get into the issue of recreational sex, you know, but I do believe that contraception, they should never do away with contraception. They should have the right to contraception. If you don't want to give them the right to abort a child that they don't want or that is sick, let's prevent the child from being born altogether, all right? I know that if I was back in my 20s and felt the way I did back then, where I didn't want kids, I thought there was far too much responsibility involved in me having kids, so I didn't want kids. You know, I didn't do it. I didn't even try to have them. I was very careful about that. That in today's day and world, I would get a vasectomy. You know, I always, the hesitation there was always, back then was there that, well, what if I change my mind? And now I'm 78 years old and I realize I don't think I would have changed my mind. I think that's exactly what I should have done. Take the load off the woman, I don't have to worry about anything, and just, you know, make sex much, I think it would have made sex much more enjoyable. I don't know all of what happens when you get a vasectomy, and I'm not going to, you know, I never really deeply looked into it. I should before I talk about it, right? But, you know, those kind of decisions are final, you know. It's like a tubulation, I think is what it's called, where a woman has her reproductive organs tied off and everything, and she can't ever have children. I think when you make a decision like that, it's huge, you know, because eventually, hopefully, you'll have a partner and you'll have two people involved, and you know, do you want to have leave some sort of, I don't know, legacy they call it or something like that with a child? I don't know, you know. My fear was that I'd be like my father, because I worked 16 hours a day most of my life, 6, sometimes 7 days a week, and I was happier at work than I was at home. So I just felt that that would be you know, I don't know. I just don't think it would have been a good decision to have kids back then. You know, I wouldn't have been a good father. I loved kids. Don't get me wrong. I get along great with kids. It's the responsibility petrified me. You know, at least when you date an adult, I would date women that had good decent jobs and whatnot. I never dated women that, you know, would. I shouldn't say I never dated women that were destitute. I did date some women that were poor, you know, weren't rich or anything like that, weren't that intelligent or whatever. But most of them were above average intelligence, very successful in their own right. Didn't make the greatest decisions when it came to men because they went out with me, and I was basically no good back in those days. But you know, I think I admire certain women. I admire Michelle Obama. I think she's would have made. I've said this more than once that she would have made a brilliant Supreme Court justice. I understand the reasons she doesn't want to do it because once you've been once you've been president, first lady, you understand something. You know, you're going to have these guys looking over your shoulder all the time. People looking at you, waiting for you to make a mistake, waiting for you to do something stupid. Your kids are going to have to go through that. You know, and I just understand why women don't want to do that. You know, I can understand that. You know, the women that I've seen that want to run for president are vastly unqualified. The women that want to do it are way overqualified for it. You know, and it's just something I don't think that interests a great many women. Hillary Clinton was not somebody you wanted in the White House. I think she was a very dishonest person. Sarah Palin was a nutcase. A prelude to Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene doesn't want to be president because she knows her own party would probably shoot her in the head if she decided to run for president. Or vice president. They're not going to let her that close to the leadership of the world. You know, the world's only democratic republic. I don't know what the problem is with everybody wanting to turn the clock back. I lived through that. You know, when my father died, my mom couldn't get credit cards. Fortunately, she had some good, powerful friends that allowed her to sign leases and whatnot without, because she didn't have a job at the time. So they protected her and they helped her find a job. Was it a secretary's position? Sure, it was an administrative position. But, you know, she was, I guess in her late 50s, early 60s, she wasn't going to go out and, you know, 10 bar or anything like that, you know, at that age. Most men wouldn't do that either, you know. So she had help getting a job that she was successful at, got a job with the city, everybody loved her, she was a lovely person. Taught me a lot about integration and segregation and all that. Taught me how to get along with other people. That was her specialty back then. You know, it's a different world now. I don't know whether she would want to be an executive or not. I have my niece, who's an executive vice president in charge of digital media for IBM. She's brilliant. The younger niece, who unfortunately passed away, has the two big boys who are very successful. One's a chef, one's a drug salesman, pharmaceutical salesman. Sounds better if you say it that way. She retired very early in life to spend time with her kids. Did very well did very well in everything. She was vice president, senior vice president for Herbalife startup company, and she left. I don't know whether she left before or after the man who started the company passed away at a very young age also. So I'm not sure that's got anything to do with it. The fact that they use their own products has anything to do with anything, but anyhow, she was brilliant. So an executive and all that, and then they were fantastic. They were loved by people. They weren't resented by men. They were loved by everybody. They did quite well in their lives, you know. I'm surprised she married the man that she did, who is my age and is a Republican through and through. And I'm not even sure he's still alive because we never really talked at all. I just couldn't have him around. You know, it's like my mother's boyfriend. I couldn't have him around either. You know, it's not that they were the fact that they were Republicans, because I had quite a few friends of mine that I believed to be Republican. We just never came up in our conversations. That it was just they're so opinionated, you know, and I am opinionated too, but I have a tendency to I listen to people from time to time, and I don't. I've been accused of talking down to people at time to time. I don't mean to do that, you know, because I don't know everything about everything, like everybody thinks I do. You know, that's what happens when you know a little bit about everything, and you can comment on almost anything. You know, they think you're going around trying to show that you know everything, and that's not the case. I just don't get to talk a lot, and I like to talk, so I'll put in my 2 cents whenever I can. All right, it's a Thursday. Nothing really going on other than the two articles I just mentioned that I happen to feel kind of strongly about. You know, I don't know what's going to happen if Trump gets elected. I don't want to see the world go back to the 50s or 60s, because what I was trying to bring up when I brought up my mother back then was, and she couldn't get a job. She couldn't get, women were totally dependent upon men. I don't want to see that. You know, I think that's why I stayed single as long as I did, because I was afraid of the responsibility. You know, I didn't like leadership. I wasn't good at it. I didn't that I totally hated it. I wasn't good at it. I took the job far too seriously. Did it in the service too when they made me a squad leader. I took the position far too seriously, and well, he's a squad leader, is a serious position. Yeah, but you have to have a certain amount of empathy and flexibility, which I didn't have. All right, listen, let me get out of here. I've been on here a long time today. So, listen, I'll talk to you tomorrow.